Hello everyone and welcome to the GMS Magazine channel. I am Paco Garcia, your host, and this is the RPG Interview Room, the show in which I am lucky enough to get together with some people from the world of role-playing games and ask them a ton of questions. Now, this is not the new season yet, okay? The new season is going to start hopefully in the next few weeks, but this is kind of an in-between thing because my friend Lou Agresta suggested that I interviewed MMK about Suzerain on Savage Mojo, and I thought, okay, when Lou speaks, I listen. And when he suggests, I certainly pay an awful lot of attention because, maybe I don't know. He's a very knowledgeable man, and I trust his judgment quite a lot. So I said yes to this, and here's the interview. Now, Suzerain has been going on in one format or another for about 20 years now. In fact, this book is from 2020. So yeah, I keep my games this beautifully pristine whenever I can. Thank you very much. This is that's just me. Anyway, Suzerain was one of the first Savage World licensed products, and they've been with Pinnacle ever since. But the thing that interests me more about this setting than anything else, and this game more than anything else, is that Savage Mojo is very passionate as an organization to create community and provide with a space where people can play the game they want to play. So much so that the shape of the game itself, the canon, or the lore, is actually shaped in part by what happens around its community. They pay attention to what kind of games people have had, what kind of stories they have come up with, and when possible and appropriate, they incorporate that into the world itself. So the story and the history of the world evolves and changes in time. The game has gone through 3 editions, the third having been published recently, and I'm going to be very honest, I thought that this was going to be just another interview with another author about another Kickstarter project, and it was going to be, pretty generic. I was wrong. I was seriously and severely wrong about this, and it took me about 5 seconds of talking to MMK off camera to realize that this was going to be a lot more fun, entertaining, and informative than the average. So please, 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 please have a listen if you're listening to the podcast, or watch if you're watching the YouTube channel, because there is a lot to unpack in here. And I reckon that you should be curious about Suzerain after all. At the very least, even if it's just to join the Facebook community and the Discord community, where you can take a look at what's happening. Because this, having a world that you can have a decision power, you can have a say in how it evolves, that's pretty cool. And yeah, there is a Kickstarter coming, hopefully very soon, but more about that during the interview. I really hope that you enjoy it. So let me know your comments. I'll see you after the interview. Hi, MMK. This is the first time that I have the pleasure of actually talking to you, thanks to Lou Agresta. And, when Lou speaks, I listen. And thus, here you are recording this special episode of the show.
Well, the pleasure is all mine. Thank you for inviting me.
Tell me that at the end of the interview, right? That the pleasure is all yours, yes? Just you. Yes. I have actually questions, and a fair number of them. But because we've never spoken, I don't really know how quick you are on the uptake to answer questions, or if you have a politician's heart and avoid answering them. So I need to ask you 5 straightforward questions to warm up, and see, and then we can take it from there. Yeah, right. So, tea or coffee?
Both, but sometimes neither.
Okay, that's yeah, I can take that. That's a very politician's answer, but yeah, okay, I can take that. I'll accept it. Okay. The beach or the mountain?
Oh, I do love when you have mountains that sweep down to the sea. That's the perfect place.
No, okay, no. All mountains do that. It's just that it takes them longer for some to do that than others. Some it takes them about 1,000 kilometers, and then they end in the sea.
No. There's this wonderful set of mountains by the coast in Oregon here in the United States where you have the mountains and these wonderful ancient forests that come right down to the shore. And I've always wanted a house. It's almost like you have the forest at your back and then the sea breeze, and you can hear the waves crashing and these long sandy beaches that go for 100 miles, and you have no towns for 30 or 40 miles either way. To me, that's the perfect place, is where you can feel the mountain under your feet, but at the same time, have the sea spray on your face.
I mean, painting it like that sounds quite nice, I have to say. I'm going to have to visit you sometime. Okay, cars or motorbikes?
Cars.
Okay.
I don't want to do down any motorbike fanatics out there. I'm a cars man.
Okay, now we're getting onto slightly harder questions. Fantasy or science fiction?
Oh, you can't ask me to choose between my children. That's not fair.
I am not a fair man.
So I'm learning. You said at the end I should tell you whether it's still my pleasure.
I told you, I warn you, I'm a fairly evil person. Okay,
if I said that I'm a fan of Star Wars, which is fantasy in science fiction, then maybe that sets the scene a little.
Okay, science fantasy I like, so that's absolutely perfect. That's fine, that's good. All right, last but by no means least question. Zombies or vampires?
Give me vampires. I've had too many zombies in my life. I just can't eat any more zombies. Sorry. Too full.
Right, fair enough. Okay, right. So you can answer some questions. So we're here to talk about Savage Mojo and Suzerain, and I'm very interested in the Legends Awakening initiative because it is very much a project that it feels very orientated to build community, which is something I am very passionate about. But before that, tell me a little bit. I'm very curious about things. I've had a Suzerain book for a very, very long time. I am quite miffed as to why it's not spoken about a lot more. Why aren't you a lot better known? You should be.
Well, I guess maybe it's because as a small studio, really, it's there's me, and then I bring freelancers in where they know things that I don't know, and we work together on stuff like that. I only have so many hours in a day, and this has been true for many years. And I'm aware that I spend my time creating things, and I maybe don't spend as much time out there promoting them as I should do. Suzerain has been around for 20 years. And in that time, we have over 25,000 happy customers now. That's not a small setting in any way, shape, or form. But I think it's still very much an underground setting. Once you hear about it, you hear about it. And then you suddenly realize lots of other people have heard about it. But until somebody talks about it, it's the best kept secret. It's that, nobody ever talks about Fight Club. Well, nobody ever talks about Suzerain. The second rule of Suzerain is nobody ever talks about Suzerain. And maybe we should a lot more than we do. But it is a community, and I'm very proud of the people who play and have heard of Suzerain. And you and I are talking now, maybe so that new people might know what it is and what we do and why we do it, because it's a little bit different to other publishers. And it is very much about that sense of bringing people together to create a shared universe. And that's not something that you see every day. So I hope that more and more people will hear about it. And maybe I need to be a little less shy, a little less British, maybe, about promoting myself. But when Savage Mojo started, I'll give you an example. It was 2007, and I remember when Savage Mojo began. It was called Talisman Studios at the time, and my friend Aaron Acevedo and I created a studio, and our core mission was simply to maintain a studio that was friendly to freelance artists. So many freelance artists get a very bad deal, particularly when they don't have a big name that they can rely on for contract negotiations, and they get taken advantage of. And we said, that's not us. A friendly place for freelance artists to work together on a remarkable setting, which I humbly believe Suzerain is, and to develop tabletop RPGs that have very, very high standards in visual art and writing. And that was the core mission back then. And as a result, we created something we called the Savage Mojo family, which was a large group of people, over 100, who we knew as friends, as well as people who played in games with us, as well as being people who might also be a very talented illustrator or graphic designer or writer or editor or whatever else. And that sort of spills over into the whole community. I never really talk about us and them. We developers over here have got a product for you. No, I am a member of the community. I play games because I enjoy playing with the community. We are one community together. And that, I think, is so important. If you have tabletop role-playing games, it's not like Hollywood. It's not like these big TV studios that are now spending $20 million an episode to create Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, or whatever else they're creating. We're a small corner of the entertainment industry. We're passionate about what we do as a group, and sometimes we're tribal, yes, fantasy, science fiction. No, maybe they don't meet, but maybe they do. And Suzerain is at that point where we can all come together as fans and simply enjoy the hobby we do. And that doesn't matter whether you're a developer or somebody who's downloading one of our books. We are all in the same boat. We're there to enjoy it.
True indeed. Tell me a little bit about Suzerain. What is it all about?
For those who have no idea what Suzerain is a setting which is the universe that we have. Picture everyday life. You look out of the window, there it is. Trees, hills, mountains, cities. You have past, future, and present of the mortal timeline, as we call it. But we've added one spin to it, which is to say magic exists. Mm-hmm. You can call it the energy of the soul. You might call it chi. You might call it the force, depending on what you want to call it. In Suzerain, it is the pulse of all things. It is that lifeblood of the universe, and so pulse is the magic that we have. And everybody has this in us. And from there, we talked about, over the last 20 years, the Suzerain's being developed with the community. What would that mean? And logical progressions for that were things like, well, if you have a soul that is alive and there's this pulse through the universe, there might be a spirit world that exists, where people, for instance, you look at the shamans of native tribes who can travel to the spirit realm and talking to the spirits of horse or owl or bear. And we said, that seems reasonable if you have the soul. What would they see from their side? And then it was, but if there are spirits, what about the greatest of all these spirits? What about the gods that we have created, the pantheons, the Greek gods, the Egyptian gods of old? Or indeed, what about gods of future pantheons? If there's a past, present, and future, surely there are pantheons of gods that we have yet to discover. The gods of all true science, for instance. We started putting together the mythology of a universe that started exactly like our universe, but has that twist of magic really exists. And from there, it expanded out to seeing that you could cross through portals into the maelstrom where there are the spirits and gods living, and you can be involved in their actions as well as coming through portals and traveling through time. And we said, who gets to do this traveling? We want to be those players. We want to be those heroes. And we said, maybe it's only true heroes who can do that, because it's their job to save the universe from the bad guys. There are always going to be the super villains out there who wants to stop us. And maybe that villain is a rogue god from one of the pantheons. We had a book a few years ago that we brought out, Set Rising, which was all about a group of demigod-powered heroes trying to bring down the rogue god Set from the Egyptian pantheon. Wonderful, wonderful fun. And the stories sort of evolve naturally from just asking simple questions. You love asking questions. It's exactly like that. We just ask questions, and as a community, we answer them. We play through games and see what actually happens. How would heroes really react to this? And as a result, we've got this wonderful meta setting that is not one genre. It's not science fiction or fantasy. There are fantasy realms, science fiction realms. There's the far future. There are historical realms with a magical twist. You may see a centaur or two wandering around in ancient Greece these days. And as a result, we feel like we've got a little something for everybody to enjoy, as well as the most important thing. There are other meta settings in the world. You have things like your GURPS and riffs that can send your characters to any part of the universe to say, well, you want to play ancient Greece, play ancient Greece. You want to play high fantasy. But we weave it together with a storyline. There is progression in the Suzerain universe, and there are always things happening, which, if you play in a gaming group, you can be involved in. And you mentioned the Legends Awaken initiative. I think that's the key part to us is we've created a system whereby if you and your gaming group whether it's on playing on a virtual gaming table, whether it's around the table, or whether you just have a Saturday game at your local gaming store and they allow that under social distancing rules, then you tell us about your game, and heroic actions that happen can become a actual canon part of the lore of the universe going forwards. Let me give you an example. So a few months ago, a gaming group playing in Untamed Empires, which is a realm which is swashbuckling with magic, a little bit Pirates of the Caribbean, perhaps, but a little bit Three Musketeers. And their group was rushing to go and meet somebody at a coastal city which had a major dockyard in it. The shipyard was there to create the navy that was involved in a war between two countries. And when they got there, they accidentally were responsible for a giant supernatural storm turning up and burning the shipyards to the ground. And they described this in wonderful details to the heroic actions of the main characters, and we loved it. And so as a result, this town that was on the map, it still exists as a town, but they're rebuilding from nowhere. And the empire that they're responsible for no longer has the capacity to create as good a navy. So future things that may happen might mean that the war swings in the favor of their former enemy. And I think the playgroup was not expecting that their action would become something that other groups could go and visit. Nowadays, there are other hero groups that pass through that city, and they see that there's a city with smoldering cinders at the dockside and people trying to bring in wood and lumber. And I know there's one particular hero whose family happens to come from a very wooded region and is a noble family, and they're now selling timber to the same city to rebuild the dockyards, and he's becoming quite rich off that. So we do love bringing together gamers around the universe, around the world, and saying your actions can impact other people. Let's help those groups get together. We're the ones who bring different groups in on each other's storylines into these story arcs that we create. And sometimes we don't even predict where it's going to go. People have said to me, so where's the Suzerain universe going? What's going to happen in a year or 2 years? I have a few ideas, but in practice, the most important thing is I don't know. People will decide from the actions of gaming groups around the world. And we run some sessions, and we run when we run games on Discord, for instance, where we invite people weekly to come and join in for a couple of hours and play. Those all feed into the storyline that's going on. And we never know quite where it's going to lead. 6 months from now, we think we have an idea what sort of things might be happening with the Suzerain universe. But in practice, it's fresh to me and to the other people that work on Suzerain just as much as it is to the community. And I love that. We used to publish in the old way. We used to publish in the way that other publishers do. We take an idea, we give it to writers write the idea. This is all happening without the public being aware of it, and then the manuscript gets edited, gets sent to the art director. The art director sends it out to illustrators, and in the end, you end up with the vision that was there by the creative team. It goes for sale as a book. People buy the book, they enjoy the story, they enjoy the various player options that are offered there. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. And we used to do this as well. But as we've moved into a third edition of Suzerain in the last couple of years, moving to a model where we don't really know what's going to happen next, we work with the community to create it. That's much more fun, I'm finding. That's so much more fun.
How has the universe in that case evolved? Because one thing is when a creator such as yourself, you have an idea and ideas pop in your head because of whatever. And something very different is when people give you their crazy ideas, because, and I don't say this lightly, but role player gamers, we have some weird ideas. And I bet that you've been told more than once, hey, this happens. And you thought, how? I mean, how could anybody could possibly think that? How has that universe changed, in ways that you didn't expect?
We have a safety valve, and the safety valve is that not only does the Suzerain universe encompass anything in the past, the present, or the future that you would like to have there, but also that you can have alternate realities in that. if a group comes along and tries to do, for instance, something completely crazy, or something that we know is going to mess with another group that was in the same area doing something in the same realm, and we know that they've already asked, can we have that to ourselves? Then we'll work with the main group to keep going, and we call that the prime reality. And if something very crazy comes along, we are very happy for any gaming group to play Suzerain in whatever way they wish, but we reserve the right to say that we can't fit that in without it affecting a lot of other game groups or other stories. So that will have to be an alternate reality. And we'll talk to the game group, to the GM and their players, and say, would you like to continue along that and just enjoy what you're doing? Or can we work together that maybe that alternate reality comes and feeds back into the prime reality later on, and your heroes jump from one reality to another and come back into the prime reality? That's up to the game group. They can choose to play it however they want. But we have that escape valve because it does sometimes happen. I've got to tell you, you said it, we all have crazy ideas. I've had a few crazy ideas in my time, and I'm not ashamed to say there are a few moments in the Suzerain universe that I have labeled alternate realities because of it.
What's been, in that case, the most rewarding thing about working in that way with the community?
For me personally, it's the fact that I have access to a great many wonderful creative minds. I think if I look back at the days where we would take an idea and say that would make a great campaign, that would make a great storybook, that would make a great bit of the setting, and we took it away and we developed it as a small team. I would hire in writers and editors and then illustrators and so on. I always felt that you have a lot of control over it, but you know always what you're going to get, for better and worse. Sometimes you look back and think, if only we'd had more input, maybe before it went out to the public, maybe we would have ended up with something that was even better. Because sometimes you get the feedback after you release a book and people say to you, oh, if only you had done this, wouldn't that have been amazing? And you think, missed an opportunity. But this way, during the development period, it takes longer to develop and you are spending more time with the community. It's a time investment. It's a very great time investment for any developer. Don't do it unless you want to spend time with your community, and you have to love them dearly. But the amount of amazing people there with wonderful creative minds who are happy to act as a sanity check for the things that you're doing, to suggest new ideas, sometimes insanity, but sometimes that insanity is exactly what the product needs, and to offer, you have game groups around the world who are playing in your rule system will almost certainly be the people who know your rules better than you do. And as a result, when you come up with a new set of stats for something, when you come up with a new option for heroes to take, they're the ones who'll turn back to you and say, I know you've passed this through 3 rules gurus already, but have you thought about this, this, and this? And you realize, my goodness, if you put this with this, it's completely broken. You're right, we have to reword that. Thank you. And this happens all the time. I could not be prouder of the community for their willingness to step forward. You have to build it. You have to say to people, there's nothing sacred. Just because I'm the developer doesn't mean that your voice doesn't matter as much. Please, it matters just as much. Don't be shy to shoot me down and to tell me, nicely, please, very nicely, please, very nicely, but to tell me that I'm wrong, or that this could be even better, because I'm always looking for even better. That's the wonderful thing about doing it this way.
No, I can see that. I can see that being a very exciting way of not knowing where your baby is actually growing. You know, you have a baby and you want the best for it, and suddenly a friend from abroad appears that offers a new perspective on something that you never consider. But I guess that also means that much as you love your own canon, your own ideas, you must be prepared and willing to let them go if something else, I don't want to say to use the word better, but something better in brackets come in.
Oh, you can take the brackets away. No, sometimes better ideas come in. There are no two ways about it. I have had ideas that I thought were really good, and a writer maybe brings it to me and says, this is what we can do with it. And I'm really excited about it. The writer's really excited about it. We share something with the community, and they come back with something saying, that's okay. But if you did this or this, you've got a few other options here. And the writer and I look at each other and go, yeah, that's actually genius. Ours was okay in comparison. And we're happy to take our own ideas, scrunch them up, throw them away. You can't have sacred cows like that. You can't be precious about your own work if you're going to work with the community. Genuinely, if you say your opinion matters, you have to also be able to show that sometimes their opinion is genuinely going to be the right one, and throw away an idea that you may have thought was good, but overall, this is better. And I've done it several times now, just in the last couple of years as we've opened up more and more to the community. And have I ever regretted it? No. Have there been moments where I think that idea is still a good idea? It will find its place somewhere, somewhen. Yeah, I'm holding a few things in a little slush pile in a little document on the side that I can come back to. But I always think we get the best this way.
Tell me a little bit about different editions of Suzerain. I mean, if the world is being updated all the time with new content, with new idea, what do new editions of the game have to offer to the players?
So Suzerain has a long history, and I'm going to show my age here if my beard didn't already show my age a little bit. But Suzerain has been in development since, oh goodness, it was a different millennium when Suzerain started being developed. Each edition has lasted for 10 years, almost exactly, and we've said it's time for a new edition. The big differences between them have often been where we wanted to take a slightly different look at the Suzerain universe, a new angle on it. The first edition, you played as people who were themselves spirits. You are the newly deceased. You're the ghosts of your former self, and now you can, through the help of divine beings, inhabit the bodies of people in different time periods. These things called reincarnates, which allows you to step into all sorts of situations. You can suddenly appear with a mission from the gods in the middle of a negotiation between two kingdoms, and you appear and you take over the role of one of the characters. You literally slide into their body and you become that character. And that was a very fun play style for what it did. But for the second edition, we decided that we wanted you to have a chance to be the classic hero, born and bred, have an upbringing. You live in a particular corner of the Suzerain universe, a realm as we call them, and one day you find your father's old rusty sword, and a group of small furry mammals come at you, and you fight them off with the sword, and suddenly you're on the path to heroism. We wanted more of that experience with it. And that was our second edition. And then 10 years further on, we had the opportunity, because the rule system is getting a big update. We're a Savage Worlds setting primarily. So the rule system was getting updated to Savage Worlds Adventurers Edition, and we said, this is it. 10 years, perfect timing for us to look at it and say, we've always wanted to do something a little more than that. Let's take a new perspective. So the third edition, you no longer play the same kind of person. You are now playing as somebody who begins as being a true hero of the universe. Even at the most basic of ranks, you are already effectively a superhero, whether you're from a fantasy setting or a sci-fi setting. You already have some serious powers going on, and you are expected to be a savior of the universe right from the get-go. The previous edition, you started, as they call it, off the farm, and built up a little bit of a reputation in your local area, and then in the local town, the city, the country, and eventually you become a hero. And from there, you could go through portals and visit other realms and see the gods, or go to the future, or whatever else. But with this edition, we really wanted that right from the start to say you begin as a hero, and we'll work our way up from there. And at the end of it, if all goes well, you'll actually become demigods and gods yourselves, and therefore have the chance to retire and let other gaming groups maybe come and visit you out in the Maelstrom in your god realm. So the changes of edition, apart from giving us a chance to hone and update rules and change the offering we're doing there, also allow us to create a new environment for people to play in, because you play a different type of hero. So your game experience will be slightly different. The universe hasn't changed much. It changes because things happen over time. Mm-hmm. But the play experience changes between editions because you're playing a different type of character. Could you go back and still play the previous kind of character from the second edition? Of course you could. We're not taking that away from anybody. Go ahead and play that style. If you, however, want to enjoy the new material we're bringing out, we're focusing on the the hero out of the gate, right from the get-go, you have those powers, and they will just get more and more powerful, those powers. So that's really that's what we use editions for.
In that case, tell me a little bit about how you, because if rules change, and you know, Savage Worlds changed for the third edition quite a lot. How do you keep the older material that you might have published, you know, 5, 7, 10 years ago, so it can be still used for this third edition?
It was an active choice of ours in the very early days when Savage Worlds was young. We had a very good relationship with Pinnacle Entertainment, with Shane Hensley, and we're one of the early licensees to jump in and say, yes, we would like to use Savage Worlds as a rule system. The idea of fast, furious fun is extremely potent when you want to travel between realms and have an experience, which I always refer to as having those wow moments that you remember for years, but having at least one of those every session. Then having a rule system that allows a lot to happen in a game session is important. And Savage Worlds, definitely when it was created, was working around that principle, and has the advantage of having come from previously from having been a tabletop game, was that the combat rules have a lot of sophistication and depth to them for a simple system. So they're not rules light. There's actually a great deal of player variety. The heroes can be you have a lot of different builds that work, and there are people in Savage Worlds who will go at great length to say to somebody who's never heard of Savage Worlds, this is not a complex rule system, but there's a lot of depth, a lot you can do with it. And I think that's what attracted us initially to sort of get in early with Savage Worlds. That and the promise that Shane made, which was that as he went through several editions, and again, he updated Savage Worlds to bring in new ideas, to weed out things that weren't working as well as he would like, that no edition would ever break what came before. You can take stuff that was written for the previous edition of Savage Worlds, any one of the Suzerain books, for instance, from the previous edition, and in just a few minutes, you can update it. As a GM, you don't have to spend hours and hours updating it. A few minutes is all it needs to update almost all of the stat blocks for encounters, for villains, for extras, for all of those critters and NPCs, and to be ready to play under the new edition of Savage Worlds. And that's one of the reasons why we love Savage Worlds so much, is because nothing that we did in the last 10 years went away and became useless. Nothing required a GM to come up with hours and hours of conversion notes, and we could focus on the new edition of creating Suzerain content and didn't have to go back and rewrite and re-edit and re-lay out and send out whole new versions of those old books. As a small studio, we want to focus on new things. We want to have something new and exciting happening with the community at every given stage. If we had to spend a couple of years going back through our last 10 years worth of books and rewriting them and reworking them for a new edition,
that would be all you do.
That would have been hard for us. So
how many books have you published thus far?
I think in the last 10 years we did, just for Savage Worlds, we did 15 big books, big hardback books, and about 500,000 words of other supplementary material. That's
not bad at all.
So there's a bit of material out there, and I'm so pleased none of it is, oh, you can't play that anymore. No, it's not. It is still very playable. We regularly, even though we're into a third edition now, have people come to the community and they are glowing about what their experience of Suzerain is. And when asked, oh, so which bit of Suzerain have you played? Which corner of the universe did you go to? They'll talk about something like Shanghai Vampocalypse, which was released for the previous edition, so it's 5 years older now. But it won an Emmy Award for a reason. It's a very, very fun, compelling campaign that does a genre crossover, and a lot of people have enjoyed the idea of being in a cyberpunk city, but playing ancient Chinese martial arts masters, coming back to save the city from, well, let's throw in some horror, from an invasion of 8 million vampires. And you have 24 hours. At the beginning of the 24 hours, 8 million vampires appear at the city, outside the city, and you have the next 24 hours is what the campaign is what you play through. And ultimately, you can imagine when I talk about I want every session to have a wow factor moment, There are many wonderful potentials there. For those who aren't familiar with the way that Savage Worlds tends to do campaigns, there's this plot point campaign system where you come up with 10 to 12 key episodes, key plot points, which is one session that progresses the plot quite importantly along the way. And then we certainly developed a bunch of what they call Savage Tales, which are one session adventures that you can put in at any point in between those. So you could, if you only want to do 12 sessions and that's your whole campaign, not put in any Savage Tales, just the core plot points, and you would have your campaign. But you may choose that some of those interesting little side quests, they come in, and each of those will advance the plot in some way, but it doesn't really matter where they turn up, and if they would not happen at all, it doesn't matter. And so we have episodes where we have the apocalypse now, where you have your gunboat going along at night through the outskirts of the city, and you can hear explosions in the distance and napalm landing, and you've got the darkness of the riverbanks, and then you've got the growl of feral vampires scouting out for your blood because they can smell your blood on the water, and you're drifting through this surreal landscape of downed aircraft and things, and you can have that kind of moment there because it isn't a core point of there, but it's such a great wow moment for the players. To feel that in the middle of the night, you've got 24 hours. So the middle of the night, when the vampires are at their height, you have this surreal moment of drifting along in this gunboat towards your destination, and I really like that. And to this day, there are a great many people for whom Shanghai Apocalypse is, the pinnacle of what they've enjoyed campaign-wise. It's the most fun they've had because it's packed with all these moments that they talk about a year, 2 years, 5 years down the line. Hey, remember that moment we nuked Shanghai? Shouldn't say that. Plot point spoiler. It's a possibility. We also don't give firm conclusions to our campaigns. We let GMs decide based on player actions how they end. But that's one of the options, is that you end up destroying your own city. So, I think that I'm very pleased that people can go back to that material. It's still as relevant today as it was then. I'm still very, very proud of all of those books, and I'm pleased that they aren't disappearing. If we were in some other rule systems, that would be much harder to deal with. If we had been in, for instance, with Dungeons and Dragons, as much as I love Dungeons and Dragons, can you imagine us doing a conversion between 4th edition and 5th edition?
That would be a nightmare.
It would be a disaster.
Yeah.
So we don't have that, luckily.
That's very good. Okay, so you have 3rd edition now, and you're obviously very keen on supporting the line. What's going to happen to it? What are your plans?
Okay, well, right now we are at an exciting crossroads, because coming in the next few weeks we will have the Kickstarter for the core book. And while you can download the core book for free right now, we have taken the decision that, and again, this is Savage Mojo. This is very much an us thing. We like to give a lot of gaming to players without them having to pay for it. So anybody who goes to DriveThruRPG and goes and looks up Savage Mojo will find there's an entire section called Free Treasure. And there are dozens of products there that are free for download. And I don't mean one-page products. I mean that for everything we've produced in the last 2 years is currently free. You can have the core book, 7 adventures, each of which has their own set of pre-gen characters, plus other material, and you download it all. You can play an entire campaign with the core book and those adventures. Have them with my blessings. I want you to have fun. When we talked about doing a Kickstarter, we said this is the moment where we transition from just setting the groundwork and what it's going to be like to be in this new edition of Suzerain, and we're going to start bringing out more and more of those big set piece books and bring them to the public. So for us to do that, we want to double the size of the core book. So we've decided that we want to double its size, give twice as much material to people to have as their core book, and we want to do a print edition of it. And for that, we have the Kickstarter coming up. There are a few little secrets within the Kickstarter. I'm not going to spoil them now, but we will also be giving away a whole bunch of other stuff that through the Kickstarter for people who help us out with it. And from there on, we will go into doing. We have planned one big campaign book, a bit like I mentioned, the Shanghai Apocalypse. We'll have a lot of setting material, a bunch of player options to create your hero in that ancient Chinese martial arts master style, or as a cyberpunk hero, or whatever you want to be. And there'll be a full campaign. I still believe that we should generate campaigns. For those who've been participating in the shared universe side, our Legends Awaken initiative, again, it doesn't cost anything to join that. You just come and find us on our Facebook group, or come and find us on Discord and say, hi, I'm here, and you could be a part of that. But we will be wrapping up the last couple of years worth of content into a campaign book that will probably be the biggest we've ever produced. We're really looking forward to it. There have been some amazing plot twists that I never saw coming that have happened. And for those who may have not been a part of that for the last 2 years, we think that campaign book, when we finish it, that's the next thing after the Kickstarter, after we get the core book doubled in size. We think that that's going to be a very enjoyable experience. And I know a lot of people who have been around for the last 2 years are looking forward to reading the book finally and saying, okay, so let's see it as it looks in its final campaign form. It's almost like when you get these movies, they hit the cinema and they're very exciting. And then a couple of years later, you get the director's cut, which is, sort of the definitive edition. Well, that's kind of what a lot of people are looking forward to. They're looking forward to the definitive edition of the storyline from the last couple of years.
Who are part of the team creating, this printed wonder?
I'm sorry,
Who are the team? Who's with you?
Okay, so I am currently in charge of most areas of developing the book myself. I have 9 artists working on illustration very closely, and about another 30 on a lesser level when I need their skills. We had a wonderful graphic designer creating the look and feel for the new edition. Alida Saxon really did a wonderful job for our graphic design there. And our key writers for that will be, well, I've written the chunk of the book, and we have Darren Pierce, who is
yes,
really very good writer. Again, a man with a wonderful creative sense and I love his impish humor. I think that he takes an angle on things which is just splendid.
He's fantastic. I absolutely adore Darren. He's an absolutely wonderful human being. So yeah, that's excellent.
And so we're working with Darren as usual. He's been our lead writer now for a few years. Back in 2015, there was a Kickstarter called Nocturne at the time. Got changed to or Nightfall at the time. It got changed to Nocturne, but where he was hired as the lead writer, and he'll tell the story, I'm sure. But he wrote 80,000 words of manuscript. That's a lot of words. And the Kickstarter succeeded, but the 2 guys who ran the Kickstarter walked away with the money, and they left him there. And of course, he's a known name. He's a named writer. And so the audience, the backers, turns to him and said, "This is all your fault, Darren. You did this to us. You owe us a book." And he said, "But I didn't get paid. I've got no money. How am I supposed to?" So when he told me about that, I agreed that Savage Mojo would step in, and we took over the Kickstarter, got together a rules team. It was for a rule system that we'd never published before. It was for 13th Age, and I had never been involved with 13th Age before, but I have to say a huge amount of credit to the community over at 13th Age, because they were very passionate to help out. Some very good rules people for 13th Age volunteered their time, knowing there was no budget, and helped make the book happen. And Savage Mojo, we got it fully illustrated. We edited the manuscript. We put it together, and all the backers got their book. And it's a lovely book. I have to say, again, classic Darren, really very good writing, and he's got a sense of a sort of a gothic fantasy setting there that is very like nothing else you'll ever read. Well worth it. And so we helped him out with that, and he's been our lead writer. Well, I guess even since before that, but certainly after that. If Darren ever wants to do any writing work, he will always be at the core of the Savage Mojo family. Always happy.
He's a brilliant guy. I absolutely love him. So yeah, that is very, very, very good news indeed. When is the Kickstarter launching?
It is due to launch in 2 weeks' time.
Okay.
However, I have been told to say it's coming soon because I've been quite ill now. So this is something that we haven't talked about so far, but I make no secret of the fact that I have Parkinson's disease.
Okay.
I was diagnosed with it at the age of 42. I'm now 50, and I've been living with Parkinson's for the last 8 years. And unfortunately, it also means I have a very poor immune system, and sometimes that will slow me down. But other times I can go just fine. I use all sorts of methods to try and cope with the Parkinson's. Unfortunately, in February I caught shingles because my immune system was low, and shingles is nasty. That's a bad thing. Well, 6 months later, my doctor told me, you should now have the shingles vaccine. 6 months since you had shingles, let's stop you getting a recurrence of it. You're very high risk. Let's stop you getting it again. You should have the vaccination. So last week I had the vaccination for it, and I caught shingles. So you and I are having this call, and I have shingles at the moment. So yes, before I did this interview, I took some quite high dose painkillers. As a result, the last 7 days have been a complete mess. And when you're preparing for a Kickstarter, that's a disaster. Mm-hmm. I'm probably not going to really be back on my feet for another 2 to 3 weeks, the doctor says. So it may be that we end up delaying the Kickstarter almost exactly a month, almost certainly, to give me time to get back on my feet and for us to carry on where we left off. I'm desperately sad about that, but I'm honest with the community. I live with a debilitating illness, and sometimes things like this will happen. They're very understanding, and I'm sure there won't be a single person in the community who turns around and says, "But you promised us." Not a single one. And as a result, we're also very, as a community, I'm very, very keen to make sure that we support gamers who if they have physical problems, mental problems, or social problems, that we support them and include them and say, you're very welcome here. And one of the great strengths of the community that gives me joy every day is knowing how many of the community are not perfect people. They're not perfect gamers. They have their own issues. They have challenges. As I say, it could be physical, mental, it could be social challenges. And they are made to feel welcome in the community, and they are part of the Legends Awaken experience in a way that I've heard horror stories that there are some corners of the internet where they are marginalized and made to feel horrible. Well, I won't stand for that. You're made to feel welcome no matter who you are, and you're welcome to game to the extent that you can. And people are very understanding if, for instance, somebody comes along and says, I would love to join in this game, but I can't guarantee any week that I can make it because of whatever my issue is. I've never once seen any campaign say, no, you're not welcome to join us in that case. They always find a way around it. And one of the nice things about Suzerain was that when the first edition was designed, from the ground up, we wanted it to deal with one very special real life issue, which is what happens when a player doesn't turn up to a session or can't, rings 5 minutes before turning up. Oh, sorry, GM, this happens. I can't make it tonight. And right from the first edition, we have given reasons for why a particular character might suddenly disappear. They're called back to a god realm, and gods suddenly go, so we want a status update. Tell us what's going on. And the heroes off there going, but we're in the middle of negotiating with the king. I don't care about the king. I'm Zeus, the king of gods. You tell me what's going on. And so this all happens, and it allows the group to play anyway. And then the following week, or whenever the other player can come back, their character reappears. And suddenly in the middle of this negotiation, suddenly this person disappeared and then reappears. And you have to explain it. Which... if you're in a setting where witchcraft is banned, for instance, and suddenly somebody disappears and reappears, can make the whole thing quite interesting. Yeah. But it's written into the Suzerain rules that that's the case, which makes it real life a little simpler, that if people can't make it, the game can continue. Or if a GM gets burnt out, we recommend having the GM having their own character played as an NPC in the background so that you can switch GMs out for story arcs. And because there's travel between realms, you go through a portal and go from fantasy to science fiction or to a historical setting or to one of the god realms. It's quite easy for the GM to take a break and say, we've been doing this for a few months. I just need to take a little break for a few sessions. And one of the other players can step forward and say, you know what, for a couple of sessions, I've got an idea for a concept that will take the heroes and they'll find themselves stepping through a portal and we'll do something fun over here. Importantly, the campaign is continuing. You're still playing the heroes you love. You don't have to put them aside and do board game night for 2 weeks because the GM had burnout. You can keep playing the characters you love. And if you ever get to the point where I've had this happen to me personally, where as a GM, we're playing in a let's say, science fiction setting. We thought it was going to be a really good idea. We played for 6 months, loved it. It was a kind of Star Trek-y kind of environment, exploring boldly going forward and exploring new galaxies. But after 6 months, suddenly this movie comes out, and it has floating islands, and you're excited by this idea of having a landscape with floating islands, and you want to go and play in that. And suddenly you think, what should we do? Do we just cancel our characters, roll up new characters, and decide to play in a new setting, which would be the traditional way of doing it? Or because it's Suzerain, do the characters do a transition for a couple of sessions for why they would need to go through a portal to a new realm, and they keep developing their characters? We have characters who started out in fantasy, and so they ride around on a war tiger. They go to sci-fi, so they actually, whilst they were there, learned how to fire a pulse pistol, and so they have this pistol on their hip as they're riding their war tiger. They then went to the 1930s New Orleans, where they learned to become a magician using cards to cast spells, and so they have this deck of cards where they cast spells. They're hucksters casting spells through their cards with a science fiction pistol on their holster and riding a war tiger. And so the character has developed all of these different parts to them, and there's something very special about that, keeping the character for the long haul. And most players that I know are like me. They love their character, they love the archetype, and if you switch and recreate characters, when you look at it, generally speaking, there's quite a lot of your previous character in the new character. You get a reputation for playing the paladin, the good guy, the person who always wants to be in the front line. You get a reputation for being the sneaky trickster who's agile and always has the fast a quick retort and a one-liner or whatever else. Well, in this way, you don't have to ditch the character you love. Take them with you when you want to go to somewhere new. Movie comes out with big stompy robots, go to big stompy robot land. If those big stompy robots happen to be in the same place as giant dinosaurs, that's Suzerain.
Sounds absolutely amazing. Last question before we wrap it up, but where would you like to see Suzerain in the future? What would you like to happen to it?
Well, I think we answered that right at the beginning. I think I'd like for somebody to come along and say, yeah, we can do some publicity for you so that more people hear about Suzerain. Maybe I should spend a little more time on that and a little less time making stuff. But as you can see, I have a lot of fun with the community doing what I do. I ideally would like to see Suzerain move out. I'm not breaking any non-disclosures to say that, yes, for the last few years, I've been in discussion with a film studio to do the movie of Suzerain. So that is a direction that I would like to take it.
Nice.
I think that there's room for something like that. I would like to invite other creators to say hello. If somebody's watching this now and is a publisher of their own right and they have their own setting, come and talk to me about us creating the Suzerain realm of your setting, where people can go through a portal and go to your setting. Even if your setting is designed for Pathfinder or D&D 5e or whatever, it doesn't matter actually. We're happy to give you a Savage Worlds audience by having your world as part of Suzerain. I would love to spread it out to more creative teams and have new and exciting places for heroes to go constantly.
That sounds perfect. Right, okay. Let's wrap it up. I have just 3 final questions.
Number one.
What is the best advice that no one has ever given you?
Don't take the shingles vaccination. That's the best advice that nobody gave me.
Oh my God, I wish somebody had though, because that's not something I wish on too many people, I have to say.
Number two.
Imagine, what was the best mistake that you would like to make again?
Oh, there are so many mistakes. Wait, that came out wrong. No, that's not what I meant. Maybe it is. I think probably the best mistake I ever did was creating the Suzerain universe.
Okay.
I wasn't planning on it happening.
Mm-hmm.
I was a young man with dreams and ideas, and I had a company, and we were all gaming in the evenings, but we were actually providing support services to ISPs, to internet companies, helping them develop gaming divisions. And And by accident, one night, there may have been some alcohol involved. The Suzerain universe got created, and through the night, I remember sitting and writing ideas down. And in the morning, in our office, I had this whiteboard that looked like a crazy man was going to create some kind of strange cosmic experiment with stuff written all over the place and arrows pointing in different directions. And people walked in and were like, "We have a new client." And I said, "No, better. We have the Suzerain universe." That was a complete accident, but I'm very happy for that accident. I honestly, more than 20 years later, I couldn't have asked for a happier accident, and I would repeat that accident any day of the week.
That sounds fantastic. Okay. And I imagine you have a time machine and you go back in time, as you will be expected to do at some point, and you meet your 10-year-old self. And you say to your 10-year-old self, do not do this. What is this?
That's a good question. I think I would probably say to my 10-year-old self, don't beat yourself up for not being perfect. Instead, just relax and understand that at the end of every year, look back and say, I wasn't perfect, but let's see if I was better than the year before. And as long as every New Year's Eve, you look back at the year and you say, I was a better person by my own standards than I was the year before, then you're doing it. You're doing it right. You don't need perfection, and you shouldn't beat yourself up for it. It took me about 8 more years for me to make that decision actively that I was going to do that. And again, I've never looked back since there. I think that it's very important in life. I know way too many friends and family members who are very down on themselves. And then it becomes very difficult to see the positive in life and people around them. And I would give them the same advice as I was that way when I was 10. I remember it distinctly, particularly around that age, 10, 12. I was very down on myself and gave myself a very hard time. And I would say, learn from me now, but you're going to make that choice yourself 8 years from now, but make it 8 years earlier. Save yourself 8 years of really hardship. Absolutely.
That's a beautiful answer. MMK, thank you so much for being with me today. I am very much looking forward to that Kickstarter, which I hope it comes out very soon, because that will mean that you're feeling okay, which is by far the most important thing. And hope it is insanely successful.
Absolutely. I hope so too. And of course, this is the moment where I say it has been my pleasure to come on the show. And genuinely it has. With a time machine, I now go back to the beginning of the episode, and everybody who watches will see me say back there, it is my pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much. And I hope that you'll come back at some point sooner rather than later.
I'm looking forward to it.
If anything, I find that the humility, how humble Savage Mojo, MMK is, about allowing his baby to be influenced by the community, that is amazing. So many authors just hold on to their idea and stop anybody from being able to interact with it in a malleable way that it just stops the fun an awful lot. It's very difficult to play with something that you cannot make yours. But the fact that it's not just that you are going to be able to make Suzerain yours because of the way that it's been designed, but also because of the way that they're running the whole thing and how you can decide. You can have an input on how things are going to be run for the 4th edition or the 5th edition or whenever. Yeah. That's fantastic. I really hope to have MMK back at some point to talk about community building, because that is something I am very passionate. Evidently, he's very, very passionate as well. And I hope that you will take a look seriously at the Facebook groups and the Discord channel and take a look at the website. Of course, there's links in the show description everywhere. So by all means, do let me know what you think. I really love to hear your comments and your thoughts on the matter. But until the next time, when, yes, hopefully the new edition, the new season of podcasts and interviews. By the way, if you want to be in here, let me know. I'd love to have you around. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.